Mr Speaker, it is an incredible honour to have been elected to this Parliament, the oldest in Australia. I'm not the first member to stand here and claim their electorate to be the best in New South Wales, but maybe those members haven't visited the northern tip of Greater Sydney, my electorate of Pittwater. It's Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, rich with Aboriginal heritage, with rock platforms still covered in ancient engravings. And I pay my respects to the Gadigal people and First Nations people across New South Wales and Australia. Nearly the entire Western foreshore remains as it has been for millennia, protected within Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park. It's a natural wonderland. It's sandy coves that vanish at high tide, mangrove forests, waterfalls, rock pools, gum-lined escarpments and rainforest gullies. In 1788, 6 weeks after landing at Sydney Cove, Governor Phillip rounded Barrenjoey Headland and sailed into Pittwater, which he called the finest piece of water he ever saw. High praise from a man who had navigated the world. As a peninsula, we not only have Pittwater, but also beautiful Narrabeen Lagoon and stunning surf beaches, arguably Sydney's best, and seemingly free of the plastic pollution that plagues beaches worldwide. We are a unique electorate. We are home to offshore communities like Scotland Island and Mackerel Beach, where people choose nature and community over convenience, and we have semi-rural properties in Terry Hills, Duffy's Forest and Ingleside. Maybe our greatest triumph is that despite being in a major city, we are homes nestled in trees rather than trees amongst homes. When I think about what I love about Pittwater, clear themes emerge: natural beauty, a healthy, active lifestyle, and the enterprising spirit of our people, whether it's in business, volunteering, or civic engagement. This is the spirit of Pittwater. Ours is an active, community-minded electorate. Our kids surf before school, sometimes, and it's not uncommon to see an 85-year-old doing a morning sunrise swim or having a run on the beach. We are engaged and informed with over 20 residents groups, and this engagement, whilst making my electorate inbox a little bit daunting at times, is something that I deeply respect. Whether it was forming Pittwater Council in 1993, keeping Currawong Beach in the public hands, or expanding conservation zones recently, or the recent triumph against PEP 11, people in Pittwater have stepped up time after time. It is Westminster tradition to acknowledge former members of one's seat, and I respect the strong Liberal history Pittwater has and pay tribute to its leadership. Pittwater's first member, Robert Askin, was also one of New South Wales's longest serving premiers. His successors were Bruce Webster, Max Smith, Jim Longley, John Brogden, who recently co-chaired the New South Wales Drug Summit, Independent Alex McTaggart, Rob Stokes and Rory Amon. Each have shaped this electorate. I share many values and policy positions with Rob Stokes, and in fact, his inaugural speech could have well been my own. Pittwater is also home to the Rye Barry Unsworth, one of New South Wales's oldest living premiers. I thank them and local government representatives for their leadership, including the member for Wakehurst, who's here, and especially Robert Dunn, whose activism alongside the people of Pittwater have shaped the remarkable community that we have today. My connection to the Northern Beaches spans generations. My great-grandfather co-founded DY Surf Lifesaving Club, competing in the same surf carnivals as Duke Kahanamoku. Somewhat ironic, given that my surfing ability, or inability if you ask my kids. My graceful and kind grandmother, Moy Maloney, was a principal of St Ives High, and my grandfather, Jack Maloney, was a principal at Pittwater High during the famed Binny Shell infrastructure revolution. And although Pittwater High Binny Shell actually collapsed, two still remain at North Narrabeen Public School. I really hope to continue their legacy and advocate for public education by fighting for New South Wales public schools to get their long overdue school resourcing standard, full school resourcing standard. So knowledge, science and evidence-based reasoning were deeply instilled in me, and my grandparents' home was made up of actual mini Jubilee rooms. Nearly every spare dollar of their public high school teaching salaries was invested in leather-bound books, many of them which are now at home in university libraries. And I can still remember being a little girl, being made to recite Shakespeare verses. It's a very different upbringing to that my children have. Learning the Greek and Latin origin of words and other premature lessons taught by my eccentric grandfather. Today, despite the internet bringing this explosion of academic accessibility well beyond my grandfather's wildest dreams, I think he'd be horrified at the irony that we live in a world where people consume over 2 hours a day of dopamine-driven content that's turbocharging mental health issues in our children and driving populist politics. I support a social media ban for under 16s. Again, sorry kids. But I'm sure he would have been calling for a social media ban for everyone. It was he who taught me about the environmental impact of the Industrial Revolution, from climate change to the loss of topsoil, acid rain and plastic pollution. And with childhood innocence, I remember thinking, if we know what we know, why do we continue to do what we do? It is my hope that in this place I can somewhat shift that cognitive dissonance in my time. I am honoured to serve Pittwater's community, one where service is ingrained. We have New South Wales's highest volunteering rates, from Surf Lifesaving to SES and the Rural Fire Service, and numerous community organisations, some of whom I've spotted here today. Our local school's motto, one of them, is happiness through helping, and that really captures our ethos. My mother, Kathy Taylor, and mother-in-law, Jacqui Scruby, have modelled service and creativity. My mother-in-law is a wonderful artist, and I'm indebted to them both because they've helped me greatly at different times in my life. My parents divorced when I was 5 in a War of the Roses fashion, which seemed standard at the time and seemed to last a lifetime. My mother, ever glamorous, had creativity and resourcefulness, which meant we moved houses quite frequently as she made cosmetic changes to improve each house, each one a little better, a little bigger. She was resilient and fought to give me my education, always putting her children first, and for many years she cared for both my sick sister and ageing grandmother, keeping my grandmother independent and at home for as long as possible. She instilled social justice values that my Catholic education reinforced, and that is that with privilege comes a duty to serve and improve the world. I'm also indebted to my grandmother Gwen, who has been our family's rock. Like many firstborns of divorced parents, I am a fixer. However, my brave and triumphant sister Phoebe's battle with anorexia and OCD has taught me, somewhat slowly, that you can't fix everything, but you can always help. I am amazed at the life and business and family with her partner Seti she has created despite her challenges. We must do more to reverse the mental health crisis and address potential triggers, including social media and bullying. I also want to acknowledge my extraordinary brother and sister-in-law Kate, both successful US film editors, and my magnanimous brother-in-law James. So, as we all know, business is the backbone of Pittwater, and we really value individual agency, hard work and efficiency, especially in our public institutions. I've always worked hard. My first job was at 13, working throughout school, also during a gap year overseas, and then full-time in hospitality whilst also studying medical science and law at UTS. Work ethic is so ingrained in me that I struggle with what it means to relax, or as I see it, be unproductive. So the people of Pittwater can rest assured that I will work hard for them every single day. I then practiced as a planning and environment lawyer at DLA Piper before joining Energetics, advising ASX 200 companies on net zero strategy and climate risk. It wasn't surprising that at 28, well, it was a surprise at the time, that at 28, whilst planning a wedding with my soon-to-be husband, who was starting his own business, a blood test revealed that I was not only having a beautiful baby, but also was suffering from Hashimoto's, one of the most common autoimmune diseases that is on a steady rise. Since then, I've developed 2 other chronic diseases, premature ovarian failure and lipedema, suffered only by women and largely unheard of, even by doctors. We have much research, education to do to overcome a history of medical gender bias and understand the pathogenesis of chronic disease, and particularly, and interestingly, the links to pollutants and chemicals in our environment. Health is everything. A well person has 1,000 wishes, but a sick person has only one. It may be that I get my entrepreneurial spirit and dry humour from my British father John, who has only ever door-knocked for 2 political candidates, Margaret Thatcher and me. a commodity trader turned disruptor of the legal industry as he pioneered flat rate conveyancing. He instilled fiscal discipline, requiring me to produce receipts for every purchase until my 18th birthday, when the card simply read, "Happy birthday, you're on your own now." At 85, he is now my quasi-media advisor, who inundates me with newspaper clippings, instructing me to be informed, and competes with fellow constituents to meet me to discuss e-bike regulation. I think the report comes out tomorrow. I'd like to also acknowledge and thank my stepmum, Ali Taylor. Taking a break from corporate life to have children, I co-founded an online homewares business, overcoming industry resistance at the time to e-commerce, with my friend Zoe Dent, who is here today. We loved the wedding nest, but we felt every one of those 1,000 cuts you endure as a small business owner. And that experience fuels my advocacy for small and medium-sized business, ensuring they get their fair share of concessions and subsidies. From my time in federal parliament, it has become clear that those benefits seem only reserved for large, often multinational companies, many of whom don't even pay tax in Australia. This needs to change. Despite my education and work, travel has been my greatest educator. Living overseas has shaped my values and exposed me to different cultures and different policies. And I know much of my children's strong sense of social justice and environmental stewardship has come from when we lived overseas when they were younger, and our stint at world schooling as we made our way home. I'm so incredibly proud of both Sienna and Saskia, who are wise beyond their years and abound with kindness and humour, whilst also being delightfully free from precociousness. May that last. They are the future generation that we all have a duty to. I could not have pursued this path without my husband, Michael. His tenacity, spontaneity and love and support, especially in the last 6 months, as well as his outstanding performance on the polling booths. You were great. And I also want to thank my closest friends who are here today, as well as the marvellous Ishbel Cullen, a true friend. Mr. Speaker, I have just half a term to prove that an independent can deliver real results. I'm not only the member for Pittwater, but the member for Mona Vale Road. It's true. Whilst not wanting to let this government nor myself off the hook, a few days after I was elected, and I was with the member for Wakehurst, a constituent stopped me and said he would send a newspaper clipping from Pittwater News. He did. It was Pittwater News 1966, at a time when houses in Narrabeen were £6,000, and with Liberal Pittwater MP Askin as Premier, we were promised, and I quote, "The Department of Roads is acutely conscious that we are entirely dependent on road transport, and in the next 2 or 3 years, Mona Vale Road will be a 4-lane highway right through and will later increase to 6 lanes. It's been a 60-year wait, but I am committed to making sure this becomes a reality." I'm also committed to delivering for our public schools, to getting our athletes back running on Narrabeen track, improving our privatised bus services and healthcare, including advocating for increasing pay for our nurses and psychiatrists, and ensuring long-promised footpaths, particularly on coast roads. We must also meet our Northern Beaches housing targets and support housing for essential workers who serve our community with appropriate planning where community also has a voice. But this must be done in sympathy with our beautiful natural environment, and I will fight to protect Pittwater's biodiversity and beauty. If the colour teal, a mix of blue with a touch of green, carries any political meaning, it is this: a fusion of economic responsibility and environmental stewardship, of fiscal prudence and social progress. Despite our reputation, when it comes to policy, Pittwater is not the insular peninsula. Our community is deeply invested in New South Wales policy issues, from support for strong gambling reform, reducing pollution from plastics and forever chemicals, to supporting orderly transition to a low-carbon economy, including not approving coal mining expansions that threaten net zero targets. As fierce protectors of our own tree canopy, so too are we calling for the establishment of the long overdue Great Koala National Park and an end to native forest logging. It doesn't make financial sense, it's subsidised by the taxpayer, and it doesn't make environmental sense either. And we care about this because we still mourn the extinction of our local koalas, reminders of which remain in signs still scattered across the electorate. We are currently facing a 40% rate hike on the northern beaches during a cost of living crisis, and residents are rightly calling for cost cuts, efficiency improvements and independent audits. I have also. However, with over 25 councils across New South Wales raising rates in the last 3 years, or set to raise rates in the last 3 years, many of them previously forced into amalgamations with promises or false promises of lower rates, there is also an expectation that state and federal governments will step up and deliver the structural reforms needed. We must not allow populist politics to erode our confidence in public institutions, but instead focus on finding solutions to the complex underlying problems facing them in order to strengthen them. People in Pittwater also advocate for preventative health reform to relieve the strain on hospitals from chronic illness and ensure our seniors not only have a long lifespan, but a long health span. The Fletcher family, represented today by Nikki and Pat, along with my constituents and dedicated volunteers, Gay and Paul Verco, remind me of the profound impact a local representative can have on people's lives. While working with Zali Steggall, we successfully advocated for a groundbreaking drug to be listed on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, one that significantly improves the outcome for those with von Hippel-Lindau, a really devastating genetic illness. This drug halts the proliferation of tumours that can damage multiple organs and often become malignant, and it impacts whole families. For affected families, this is obviously life-changing. Their families' resilience and strength continue to inspire me and the broader Northern Beaches community. Mr. Speaker, we've reached a point where environmental sense makes economic sense. Globally, we are facing a climate emergency. Last year was the hottest on record. And as we fast approach irreversible tipping points that can't be avoided by just deleting climate change references from websites, as seems to be happening in the US, we must also acknowledge that it's costing us. Generally, insurance premiums are up 32% in 2 years, and that further fuels inflation and the cost of living crisis. Parts of Pittwater have even higher home insurance, some in the double digits. And by 2060, Northern Beaches has been identified by the New South Wales Government as having the highest cost impact from extreme weather across New South Wales. But this is an area where the New South Wales Government has the ability to make reforms that mitigate risk and put downward pressure on these costs in the long term. Following the devastating fires in LA, we must remember that in our haste to address the housing crisis, we must not allow homes to be built in flood and bushfire-prone areas, and building codes must be updated to ensure that the homes built today can withstand the weather of the future and deliver not only net zero emissions, but close to net zero electricity costs and for those families who live in them. We also need reforms that support families and small business, not strangle them. Whether it's stamp duty on home insurance that's already unaffordable, special variation rate hikes or payroll tax, we need to rethink revenue generation in New South Wales, including the $60.5 million supporting fossil fuel subsidies in this state. New South Wales should look to Queensland, where coal royalties deliver $10 billion in revenue, funding cost of living relief. New South Wales's reform was just not as ambitious. As families struggle, Queenslanders have enjoyed $1,000 off energy bills, 50-cent public transport and lower rego fees. And when it comes to being inspired to drive policy reform and achieve great change, I need not look further than my father-in-law, Harold Scruby. As many of you well know from working with him to deliver groundbreaking road safety reforms, including school zones. I may regularly debate him on policy issues, but I always admire his conviction for what he believes. He is a disruptor, a change maker, and has saved lives because of his advocacy. I'm honoured to stand here as Pittwater's first female MP for Pittwater in New South Wales Parliament. It's a diverse parliament is a strong parliament, and although New South Wales elected its first woman in 1925, there was a 23-year hiatus from 1950. But today I join the most female represented parliament in the state, in the state's history. I entered politics in 2022, not as a career politician, although I did attend youth parliament when I was 15, but because I saw the need for change. I was inspired by Zali Steggall's leadership and joined a group of politically engaged women, Sophie Scomps, Anya Geddes, Rebecca Clark, Louise Hislop and Leonie Scarlett, listening to community and engaging them in their democracy. What we heard aligned with our values. Mr Speaker, may I have slight time?
The question is the member's time be extended. All of that opinions say aye. To the contrary, no. Just keep going.
Okay. I ran Sophie Scomps's campaign, she won. I became her policy advisor and then later Zali Steggall's. And although I narrowly lost the 2023 New South Wales general election, which I would argue is a great case for mandatory preferential voting, Pittwater and I got a second chance. But as we know, elections aren't won by chance, and it's the dedication of my team and hundreds of volunteers. Some dropped everything, jumped on planes to support a by-election campaign that came out of nowhere. To them and those who helped set up my office, thank you. I won't list you all now, but especially those here today who helped set up the office and helped in the office. Emma, Les, Dylan, Jack, Sharon, Matt, Trudy and my campaign manager, Max. Around the world, people are frustrated with the major parties ignoring their priorities. And while we see a rise in populist strongmen here in Australia, independent movement has seen many women elected, committed to integrity and nuanced and evidence-based policy. That's something to be proud of. And whilst much has been said in the media about me being the first Teal MP in New South Wales Parliament, I really join a crossbench full of independents who are absolutely loved by their communities, continuing to be re-elected term after term. Teal is really a media construct and it oversimplifies what the grassroots movement is all about. Inspired by Cathy McGowan, having kitchen table conversations and leading community-led politics. It's as grassroots as it comes. Climate 200, almost always misrepresented in the media, is not one single person. It's 11,000 donors from across Australia who believe in independent community-led politics and action on climate change, and their donations supercharged my authentic community campaign. I am a true independent. I write my own policies based on consultation with my community, business, public interest groups, and I look forward to working across the political spectrum. Independents deliver, and Pittwater has seen this firsthand. During the 2023 election, for years, groups like Surfrider Northern Beaches, Living Ocean and Surfers for Climate had led the charge against PEP 11 permit for drilling oil and gas off our coastline. And realising there's nothing like an election to get parties doing good work, I approached the then member of the Legislative Council, Justin Field, with the idea to draft a bill to ban offshore oil and gas in New South Wales waters, which, to be fair, was coalition policy, but existed only in a PDF and not in a statute. What ensued was a political race to the top, where 2 weeks later the Liberals announced a copycat version of that bill, which subsequently was introduced into this place by the former member of Pittwater. And ultimately, with the current government bringing their own legislation, passed as historic law, the first of its kind in Australia. We've seen examples from the member of Sydney with decriminalising abortion, voluntary assisted dying, and at a federal level with Helen Haynes' work on the National Anti-Corruption Commission and Zali's climate advocacy. But the nuance of these policies often go unnoticed by the media. So, Mr Speaker, in this place, I will strive to move beyond the binaries of left and right, contributing to politics that values ideas over ideology, collaboration over confrontation, and the collective good over partisan gain. My commitment to Pittwater is to serve with integrity, to champion evidence-based policy, and to ensure that our voice is not just heard, but acted upon. Thank you.
Congratulations.